Hey guys, what's going on? James here. With free agency pretty much in the rear view mirror, a lot of focus has shifted to the Buccaneers draft and what the Buccaneers are going to do with that 5th overall pick. And don't worry, I'm going to have a ton of videos coming out talking about certain prospects that the Buccaneers could take with that 5th overall pick. But in today's video, I kind of wanted to give an overall review of the Buccaneers free agency and talk about all the players that they re-signed, brought in new players to the team, and some trades that they made throughout this free agency period. This is probably going to be a little bit of a longer video, but don't worry, just like last video, I'm going to have time codes down in the comment section below showing which times I talked about which certain players that re-signed, got brought in, brand new players to the team, and also a trade that was made as well. So without further ado, guys, going to be a little bit of a longer video, but let's get started. I'm going to bunch some of these guys together in the re-signing types of sections. So the first three guys that I want to talk about are Devontae Bond, Isaiah Johnson, and Mike Lidke, who all re-signed one-year deals worth $645,000. And I think these guys are pretty much all in the same kind of boat where you bring them in, have them compete for backup jobs, and kind of work at special teams as well. I think in the case of Mike Lidke, he might be in a better standing than the other two guys simply because of how versatile he is. He's played tackle before, he's played guard before, he's played center before, so I think that's going to help out his value a whole heck of a lot. In the case of Devontae Bond and Isaiah Johnson, Devontae Bond, former Jason Light draft pick, makes sense why he would want to come back in, and I think Isaiah Johnson has had a lot of decent moments on special teams as well, so it's not surprising that these three guys were brought in back on some cheap deals. I think these are some pretty low risk signings, and I'm a big fan of them. Next three re-signings I want to talk about are cornerback Devontae Harris, linebacker Kevin Minter, and defensive lineman Rakeem Nunez-Roche, who all re-signed on one-year deals worth around $895,000. Again, these guys I think are in a higher tier of depth value. Obviously, Devontae Harris, I think he could be the 4th or 5th cornerback for this team, as well as possibly a slot cornerback. I think that he's a good cornerback, and I really like that re-signing a lot. In the case of Kevin Minter, I think that he could be a kind of rotational inside linebacker on defense, especially since he's worked with Todd Bowles and Bruce Arians before. I think that that is some very good value, especially since he can teach the other linebackers what this Todd Bowles and what this Bruce Arians defensive system is all about. So I like that signing a whole heck of a lot as well. And then Rakeem Nunez-Roche, it's going to be very interesting to see what happens at that defensive tackle position, obviously because Gerald McCoy is there and nobody knows what's going to happen at this point. Definitely up in the air, but I think that should Gerald McCoy be gone from this team, I would like to see a situation where Rakeem Nunez-Roche kind of slides into that backup nose tackle position behind Vita Vea. He's a big, very big, very tall, strong defensive lineman, and I think that he could do a very good job as a run stopper and kind of just as an overall nose tackle. I think he would be a very good depth value. So I think these three guys, there's some high tier depth, and again, I'm going to be saying it a lot, but I like those re-signings. You then have the three re-signings of Cairo Santos, who signed a one-year, $1 million deal, Ryan Griffin, who signed a 2-year, $2.9 million deal, and Peyton Barber, who signed a 1-year, $2.25 million deal. And, let's talk about Cairo Santos first. I thought that he had some good moments last season. He obviously was not perfect, but honestly, I think that it was a big upgrade from the kicking situation in the couple of years past for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, and I like the idea of bringing him in on a really cheap deal and having him possibly be the Bucs kicker for this upcoming season as well. I think that that was a very interesting move. A lot of these are going to be one-year deals, so you're going to be hearing me say 1 year so-and-so $1 million deal a lot. But again, I like this re-signing a lot. I think Cairo Santos does have the chance to be a good kicker for this team, so I like that move. Moving on to Ryan Griffin, bit of a confusing move as to why the Buccaneers would re-sign him. I know that Bruce Arians said that he wants to keep 3 quarterbacks, but does Ryan Griffin want to continue to be a 3rd quarterback on this team? He's been it for the past few years now, and especially considering a move that we'll talk about a little bit later. It seems like he's slated to be that 3rd quarterback for this team yet again. So this one's a little bit of a head scratcher. I know it's at a cheap value, but I know they also gave him a little bit of guaranteed money, so I'm kind of curious as to why Ryan Griffin didn't just go out and possibly sign with a different team to have a chance to be the 2nd quarterback for a team, because fair credit, in training camps and in preseasons, Ryan Griffin has done a good job, and I think you could have a better chance to compete for a backup quarterback job elsewhere. So a little confused on this one, but I'm all for it. I personally wouldn't keep 3 quarterbacks, but, you know, it should be interesting to see what happens with Ryan Griffin. It could be a situation where Ryan Griffin could get traded later on during preseason as well. You know, we're just going to have to wait and see for that one, but a little bit of a head scratcher there. And then finally, you know, the re-signing of Peyton Barber. Huge re-signing. Love it a lot. You know, Peyton Barber, you know, he's had some very good moments as the Buccaneers starting running back the past couple of years, pretty much since the departure of Doug Martin. While it hasn't been, you know, perfect, he obviously hasn't reached 1,000 yards yet, which is pretty disappointing. There have been certain situations that have led to that not happening. Obviously, poor offensive line play, injuries, whatever have you. You know, there have been things that have prevented that from happening. I'm going to be very interested to see if he's our starting quarterback or he gives up some of his snaps to guys like Andre Ellington and obviously Ronald Jones being the big one who has the chance to take away snaps from Peyton Barber. But a one-year deal worth $2 million, you know, that's a fine deal for me. I think that Peyton Barber is still going to have a huge role on offense in terms of being the Buccaneers running back. Bruce Arians likes him a lot. I'm just going to be kind of interested to see what happens with that running back situation, especially considering how the Buccaneers spent a second-round draft pick on Ronald Jones last year, and they might even draft another running back this year. So that one is a position battle to keep an eye on. Finally, you have the Donovan Smith contract, the big kahuna of re-signings for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, a 3-year, $41.25 million deal. And, you know, I'm still cautious about this contract. I know people have told me, well, James, look at the money that Trent Brown signed for with the Oakland Raiders. You know, the Buccaneers got a great deal. Come on now. And, you know, I understand that the Raiders obviously overpaid for a guy like Trent Brown, and it makes the Buccaneers re-signing of Donovan Smith look a whole lot better. But I still think that, you know, Donovan Smith needs to get his consistency up, and I really want to see a guy like Harold Goodwin with this new coaching staff, which, by the way, I think is going to be the best coaching staff the Buccaneers have had in so many years. I think that Harold Goodwin should take a guy like Donovan Smith under his wing and really, really work hard with him and get him to be more consistent and kind of mold him into a top left tackle worth the money that he is being given right now. Because right now, I still am kind of on the fence as to whether or not Donovan Smith deserves that kind of money. I think he still needs to earn it a little bit, and I think he still needs to develop more consistency to prove that he has earned that type of contract, you know? So I think he's still going to be under a microscope, and he's still going to be scrutinized for the littlest of things. And I still am cautiously optimistic that things are going to work out. But I really want to see improvement from Donovan Smith, and I think that this coaching staff is the one to do it. So, you know, I'm cautiously optimistic about this move. Let's get into some of the players that, you know, have been brought in brand new to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. The first two signings, or I guess I should say 3 signings that I want to talk about, is safety Kentrell Brice, who signed a 1-year, $1 million deal with the team. Offensive lineman Earl Watford, who signed a 1-year, $870,000 deal with the team. And then running back Andre Ellington, who signed a 1-year, $805,000 deal with the team. Let's talk about Kentrell Brice first. I think he's a little bit in the same boat as Isaiah Johnson, although I think he is going to be a little bit higher up there considering he got $400,000 more. I do think that Kentrell Brice does have a very good opportunity to be a backup safety on this team and maybe even possibly replace a guy like Isaiah Johnson in terms of being that special teams type of guy who goes out there and makes a few plays on special teams and really earns his keep in terms of being on the overall 53-man roster come game day. So I'm still, you know, I'm still fine with that signing. I think, again, another low-risk type of move, a lot of 1-year deals. We've talked about all that, and that's a move that I'm going to be very, very interested to see how Kentrell Brice kind of etches out a role for himself, not just on defense, but also on special teams as well. Earl Watford, I think that he's pretty much going to be the highest tier of backup offensive line for this team. Obviously, Bruce Arians has said that he can play every position on the offensive line, and he has played with Bruce Arians before. Way back in Arizona, he's a former Bruce Arians draft pick, so you figure he's going to be the top backup offensive lineman, and he's going to be playing everywhere pretty much. He's going to be the swing offensive lineman, period. So again, I like this re-signing, or I like this pure signing a lot. 1-year, $870,000 deal. You know, see how things work out. If you like it, maybe re-sign him to a couple-year deal after the season is up. If you don't, let him go into free agency. You know, he can possibly get an offensive line opportunity with another team. Again, I'm kind of liking these depth signings so far. And then running back Andre Ellington, 1-year, $805,000 deal. This is what I was talking about with the running back situation. Does Andre Ellington potentially potentially take snaps away from a guy like Ronald Jones or even Peyton Barber. That remains yet to be seen. We just have to wait and see, because Andre Ellington hasn't played football in a little bit. He obviously had a couple of workouts and a couple of contract offers in years past, but he hasn't played football in a decent amount of time. So it's going to be interesting to see how he rebounds and what kind of role he could potentially eke out for himself on this team, be it a receiving back or be it some type of rotational change of pace type of back. That's going to be another kind of move to keep an eye on. As well as him battling for a roster spot with other guys like Sean Wilson, among other guys, for that, kind of backup running back position. Then have the signings of wide receiver Breshad Perriman to a 1-year, $4 million deal, and quarterback Blaine Gabbert to a 1-year, $2.9 million deal. Let's talk about Breshad Perriman first, because I think this one could be a kind of an underrated signing. And I said in the last video that I didn't know if Breshad Perriman could be a replacement for a guy like Deshaun Jackson. I take that back. I think Breshad Perriman does have a chance to be a replacement for a guy like Deshaun Jackson. He's a deep threat with a ton of speed and a ton of height and a ton of, muscle and weight and whatnot. A lot of you guys corrected me about that in the comment section, and I thank you for that. I looked into it a little bit more due to your guys' suggestions, and Breshad Perriman is fast. He's really fast. He does have a little bit of a catching problem in certain situations, specifically with the Cleveland Browns and definitely with the Baltimore Ravens, but from what I've seen and from what I've gathered, he's been improving every season a little bit more as time has gone on, and he's still very young, 26 years old. So I think that, again, with this coaching staff, with Bruce Arians, with Byron Leftwich, I think he does have a chance to be a pretty decent wide receiver for this team, possibly a slot guy, possibly, a fourth wide receiver who comes in to take the top off of that defense, and I'm good with this signing. I think it can be a valuable thing. Obviously, there's been rumors of Chris Godwin and even Mike Evans going into the slot in certain situations, so I would be fine seeing a 3 wide receiver lineup of Mike Evans at the 1, Breshad Perriman at the 2, and let's say Chris Godwin in the slot. I think that'd be a very good wide receiver lineup, and I like that signing a lot. And then moving on to Blaine Gabbert, that's what I was talking about with Ryan Griffin earlier. Kind of surprised as to they signed Ryan Griffin, and then they just immediately signed Blaine Gabbert a few days after that. I think Blaine Gabbert's going to be the backup quarterback. Bruce Arians said it himself when talking about Blaine Gabbert and the backup quarterback competition. He said it's an open competition, but it's probably not. So it's safe to say that Blaine Gabbert's probably going to be our backup quarterback for the 2019-2020 season. And I've seen a lot of people criticize this signing, and I'm still fine with it. I still think that Blaine Gabbert hasn't been brought in to be the starter under any circumstances. I think he's going to be brought in to be the backup, kind of have and build a mentorship / chemistry type of role with a guy like Jameis Winston, and I think he's going to execute his job perfectly, and I expect nothing less. I don't expect Blaine Gabbert to be a starter in any capacity. That's not what I'm expecting at all. I think he's going to do his job as a backup quarterback, and I think he's going to do it pretty well. One signing I want to talk about real quick before I get into the, the big 3, free agency signings that the Buccaneers made. Philip Anderson, a kicker on a 1-year deal, just bringing in some competition for a guy like Cairo Santos. I put it in this section because you literally never know what could happen with some of these guys. Nobody probably thought that Peyton Barber, Adam Humphries, or Cameron Brate were going to eke out such a, big role for themselves on this team. So, I expect Philip Anderson to come in and compete, and you never know what could happen. But moving on to the 3 big free agency signings that the Buccaneers made, linebacker Dayon Buchanan on a 1-year, $2.5 million deal. Outside linebacker Shaq Barrett on a 1-year, $4 million deal. And then punter Bradley Pinion on a 4-year, $11 million deal. Talking about linebacker Dayon Buchanan with the 1-year, $2.5 million contract first. Tremendous value. I think all 3 of these guys got signed for some pretty decent value, and Dayon Buchanan and Shaq Barrett, I think, signed for the absolute greatest value possible in terms of everything. These guys, I think, are going to be very productive players for this defense, and I think that at 1 year, $2.5 million for Dayon Buchanan is a insanely good deal, because it's not too long ago that Dayon Buchanan was doing some really good things for that Cardinals defense. It was really starting to show that he can be a young up-and-coming defensive star for some NFL teams. Obviously he fell off a little bit in the next couple of years, but I think that he has the ability to come in and really be a productive, money backer, as they've been calling it, for Todd Bowles' defense. I really think that he can play a little bit of linebacker, a little bit of safety. He's good at coverage. He's good at tackling. He's fast. He has good awareness mentally. I think that he's a really, really good signing at $2.5 million. That is some very, very good value, and I'm a big fan of that signing indeed. I think he's going to be a starter in certain situations for sure, and I think that he's going to have some really, really good value. Shaq Barrett, same situation. I think that he has a very good chance to be a starter, like I talked about in his own personalized video. He has done some awesome things as a rotational edge rusher for the Denver Broncos, and I think now he has a very good chance to be a starter, and if he is the starter, I think he's going to perform right away. And at $4 million, even there's general NFL national media who have said that this is a steal. This is one of the better value signings of the entire free agency period, and I've got to agree with him. I know a lot of you guys are a fan of Shaq Barrett as well, especially since, you know, he's part of the Bucs, MrBucsNation family now. You know, I'm a big, huge fan of that signing in general, and I think that it's probably my favorite signing of free agency period. And then finally, talking about Bradley Pinion, the punter deal, 4 years, $11 million. I know a lot of people were saying, well, Bryan Anger made too much money. Well, Bradley Pinion's making the same amount of money that Bryan Anger is making. I don't think a lot of people have seen that yet. But the reason that Bryan Anger was released and Bradley Pinion was signed is he's younger. I believe he's 4 or 5 years younger than a guy like Bradley Pinion. He's got a stronger leg and he's better on kickoffs, which will definitely take away some of that stress from a guy like Cairo Santos, who can now focus back on field goals. And obviously, I've seen some people say, well, 49ers fans have said that Bradley Pinion's trash. If you look at his numbers aren't that different from Bryan Anger. And I think Bryan Anger was still a good punter all up until he was released, all things considered. So I really like the Bradley Pinion signing. Obviously, it was one of the only long-term deals that was signed. It was literally Bradley Pinion and Ryan Griffin and Donovan Smith. Those were the only multi-year deals that were signed the entire offseason, which I find kind of hilarious. But, you know, it shows that this coaching staff has a lot of faith in a guy like Bradley Pinion to be their punter for the next few years, and it's a signing I'm pretty good with as well. But, you know, if I had to pick two of my favorite free agent signings and re-signings, I would definitely say Dejon Buchanan and Shaq Barrett, hands down. Both those guys, I think, are going to carve out some amazing roles on defense, and I am really, really excited for Shaq Barrett. I think he could be a phenomenal edge rusher for us. So those are my two favorite signings out of all of the signings, period. So, yeah, pretty decent in terms of re-signings and bringing in new players to the team. Finally, I want to talk about the one trade that the Tampa Bay Buccaneers made. They obviously made a trade with the Philadelphia Eagles, giving them DeSean Jackson and a 2020 7th-round draft pick, and they received a 2019 6th-round draft pick, which is pick number 197. Again, this is a move that I feel does have some value to it because the Buccaneers, they were pretty much going to release DeSean Jackson anyway, so to get a 6th-round draft pick this year, pick 197, you never know what could happen with these late round draft picks, guys. That's all I'm going to say. Antonio Brown was the late round draft pick. Tom Brady was the late round draft pick. Need I say more? And I think it's good that the Buccaneers got anything for a guy like DeSean Jackson. Obviously, the situation just didn't work out in the end, and I know a lot of people are going to say, oh, trash move, trash free agent signing, Jason Light. But honestly, it wasn't necessarily his fault. It's just a problem of situation of coaching at the end of the day. The fact that that chemistry wasn't built between Jameis Winston and DeSean Jackson, I think a lot of that falls onto coaching, and just, you know, just the lack of chemistry being there. It just wasn't a good situation. Obviously, DeSean Jackson kind of had a very tenuous situation with the coaching staff and certain players on the roster, and it just didn't work out. So I'm happy that the Buccaneers got any type of value. We got another 6th-round draft pick in this upcoming draft, and I'm definitely okay with that. But guys, that's pretty much it for this entire, you know, free agent review types of videos. My two favorite signings being Dejon Buchanan and Shaq Barrett. Probably Shaq Barrett being my favorite signing pretty much by a very healthy amount. And the couple of moves that I'm a little bit cautious about and a little bit like, about the Ryan Griffin re-signing is a little confusing a little bit. And then Donovan Smith, I'm still on the fence about that, and I still want to see him improve. But, you know, it was a kind of based on a need. Obviously, the Buccaneers needed to bring a guy like Donovan Tyron Smith back, and they're giving him a lot of money now, and I really want to see him play better to prove that he has earned that type of contract. I know he pretty much already has given his Iron Man streak and whatnot, but I do want to see the play improve, and I think that that is very, very possible with the current coaching staff that is in place. But guys, let me know what you thought about this entire free agency period down in the comments section below. Did you like it? Did you hate it? What moves did you like the most? Which moves did you hate the most? Let me know down in the comments section below. I want to thank you guys so much for watching this video. In the next video, we should have some talks going on about certain types of prospects that the Buccaneers could take with the 5th overall pick. But until that happens, and until next video or next live stream, I'll see you in the next one. And until then, and as always, guys, goodbye for now, and go Bucs.